If you are watching this video, you've likely already written your paper 1 and 2 exams. So just one final push in geography to get you over the line. So in this video, we're going to work through the entire June 2019 paper 3 examination. I will show you how to interpret the resource booklet, how to answer every question in the exam paper itself, and most importantly, explain how examiners award marks. So this video is a bit longer than my usual one, so stick around as much as you can. Maybe do it in 1, 2, or even 3 sittings. So paper 3 is different from papers 1 and 2. This is what we call a synoptic paper. So instead of studying topics separately, you'll need to make links between them. So in this exam, you'll use knowledge from people in the biosphere, forests under threat, and consuming energy resources. So throughout the paper, you're required to think like a geographer, analyse evidence, make connections, and reach justified decisions, both in 4 and 8 mark questions. Quick reminders where you are right now, probably. So you are paper 3. This is worth 25% of your overall mark. There are 64 marks on offer. So less than the other 2 papers, and yet you still have an hour and a half of exam time. So let's look at the structure and content. You may want to get a copy of the paper that I'm going to go through today. It's in June 2019. There's a link at the top there of where you can find it, as well as the resource booklet. No need to print the resource booklet itself. That's quite a weighty document. But if you print the exam paper, that'd be really useful for you to go through. But if you can't do either one of those, that's completely fine as well. Okay, let's first talk about the resource booklet, because this is not something you've seen in 1 and 2, although I would have spoken about it in class, of course. So the booklet is laid out into the 3 sections. So the people in the biosphere, this is the issue and the background information about a particular place. It introduces the geographical issue and gives you some initial context. It introduces the location. But one really important thing to say, they're not expected to know about that location, that place. Okay, so I know some students do worry about that. So your job really is to interpret the information, make links between topics. The example we're using in this booklet is Norway. Section B of the booklet, that's under the topic of forests under threat, looking at environmental impacts, effects on ecosystems, biodiversity, climate change, threats to the natural environment, links to sustainability, often questions on sustainability, and the final section there is consuming energy resources. So that's around economic and social impacts of utilising resources such as oil. So that production, the use, the benefits of oil, and the costs and the challenges, or the advantages and disadvantages, plus future development options. First important point to make, now I've given you the structure, is that when you're in the exam room, the first thing to do is have a look at the resource booklet. Read it carefully, identify the issue, identify 3 options, quickly flick through the booklet. You can circle, highlight, stats, maps, opinions, graphs, just things that you will use. But 10 minutes is a good enough time. You will always go back to the resources for different reasons. Now, in the resource booklet that we're looking at, section A, people in the biosphere, this is the first page. So I highlighted some of the more important things that I might need moving forward to answer the question. This is about Norway. On another day, you'll be able to read this through completely. But I've identified, should Norway continue producing oil, or should it start moving away from fossil fuels? That's clear because of the different arguments within this source document. For example, Norway meets much of its own energy needs with hydroelectric power, a renewable resource, so it doesn't need the oil. Many Norwegians think it might be time for the country to turn its back on fossil fuel production. It's because it produces oil. So the country is extremely vulnerable to climate change. Most of the taiga or the boreal forest covers large areas of Norway and is threatened by rising temperatures. So really this is the most important page in the entire booklet. So spend some time on this. It introduces the key issue, gives you some context about the rest of the paper. Going into figure 1, so this is our first resource. It's a photograph of the Norway's taiga forest. So remember, photographs can tell us a lot. We can see relief, vegetation, rivers, slopes, evidence of some environmental conditions. So there's a lot of information you can extract from here. So there will at least be one or two questions from this figure. The second figure. So this figure introduces one of the major environmental concerns. You can see in the one on this one here, gives an indication of where you are, just in case you can't remember where Norway is. And again, there's information in any of the countries that it's highlighting and talking about. Norway, could be Canada. So the distribution of biomes here may change, this is what the estimation is, as future temperatures increase. So predicted changes in the distribution of biomes between 19 and 2100. So we're already starting to think about winners and losers and the possible impacts of climate change. So this page focuses on biodiversity and ecosystem relationships. So remember that paper 3 brings together knowledge from across the course that you've done. So don't be surprised to see concepts such as food webs, like this, ecosystems and biodiversity. So this is a really important figure. You can see, again, Norway. We can see projected temperature increases across Norway here. And some of the consequences as we move through the paper. Just keep asking yourself whether the benefits of oil production outweigh the environmental risks associated with climate change. And that was identified in the first page. So this is in the resource booklet, moving into section C, consuming energy resources. So Norway's quite an interesting country because although it exports huge amounts of oil, much of its own energy use, electricity, comes from hydroelectric power. So you can see straight away, that the situation is a little bit more complicated than saying Norway's an oil producing country. Yes, it does produce oil, but much of it is for export. So speaking of which, so these graphs, these tables, they start to show us how important oil is to Norway's economy. So whenever you see graphs, tables in paper 3, look for trends, anomalies, relationships, because that's really kind of the focus in most of the exam type questions. Very familiar to everybody that's worked with me. You see lots of examples like this in paper 3, and we work through these examples ourselves. So this page really helps explain why Norway's oil industry has been so successful. It's often the moment in the paper when you guys will realize why the decision is difficult. But of course, you would have actually done a lot of work on this already. So it's easy to say stop producing oil, but when you see how much of Norway's welfare systems here, Norway has a very generous welfare system, including excellent maternity and childcare provision. Well, that's paid for from the sovereign wealth fund, which gets its wealth from oil revenues. So figure 10 is looking forward to the future. So factors that may affect Norway's future development. So this figure introduces the challenges associated with developing new oil fields and the development in production. So as you read it, you should be already weighing up environmental, economic and political factors. So this final figure, so that's your resource booklet. Like I said, I've done that pretty quickly. You'd want to spend 10 minutes just going through it. I've done that quicker than 10 minutes, so you do have time to read it, to analyse. I've kind of pointed and signposted you towards the things that you might want to have a look at and annotate. But don't spend a lot of time highlighting, annotating things. You need to go through the booklet. This is really a really important page because it gives us different viewpoints. Fishermen, tourism operators, got oil companies here, so all have different opinions. So pay close attention to these perspectives, and this will be useful for your 12-mark question at the end. Okay, let's go into some of the questions of the exam. Using section A, pages 2, 3 and 4 in the resource booklet, answer this question. Study figure 1. Identify 3 local factors affecting where the forest can grow. So the first point is make sure we understand the command word identify. It's just list, it's just identify, recall or select. Study figure 1, go straight to figure 1. So here's figure 1. It's a taiga forest in northern Norway. So this is only a 1 mark question, but worth sort of pausing and thinking about how we identify things on features on a photograph. Now, geographers think in a systematic way. Think about, go from the top. So the sky, let's start there. So the impacts that affects where forests can grow, climate, and then we can maybe perhaps go a little bit lower. Water availability, relief, geology, and resulting in different types of vegetation. So really just trying to think in that systematic way will help you answer questions like this. Physical geography questions, factors on where vegetation grows or where agriculture might be, climate, water, relief, geology. So, a reference to their 1 mark question. What I meant is there are 3 things to write down. So some examples here for you in that same category. Can you see the climate, water, relief and geology? That's the systematic way to think about physical geography and the impacts of factors on the environment. So some of the factors there, you just need to put temperature, controls growing season and plant survival, for example. Question B, identify biome X. So if you're unfamiliar with the place that you're looking at in the booklet, it's unlikely to be the case. Then you need to have a look at what else other information is available to you. It's a good example, this one here. You can, if you're not too sure, you can use the process of elimination. So we can immediately rule out tropical grassland and desert, because look where Norway is, up in the Arctic Circle, too cold. Temperate grassland is unlikely, because figure 2 here shows biome X is north of the taiga forest. So the taiga forest is here, so it's north of the taiga forest. What else do we find north of the taiga forest is, of course, the tundra area. So a reminder of the biomes that you may be asked to talk about: temperate forest, desert, tropical rainforest, tundra. And these are it's a basic table overview which you may have seen in class, so you may want to pause at some point and make some notes on that. Let me also signpost you to a really good website that has some really great videos on biomes. So if you're feeling a little bit uncomfortable, if you're looking at that and thinking, oh, what does all that mean, can't remember, then print out that table, but also have a look on this website here. Okay, next question. State 2 characteristics of the temperate forest biomes. So this is where that table comes in handy. So any of those characteristics. Okay. Explain one way increased forest growth could affect the atmosphere. So let's start with the basic point. This question asks us to explain one way increased forest growth could affect the atmosphere. So increased forest growth simply means growing of trees, having more trees. So that's our starting point. But on its own, it's not enough to get the full 2 marks because we haven't explained anything yet. So we need to add the process. So I'm going to put that process up here in a second. So trees carry out photosynthesis. During that process of photosynthesis, trees use sunlight, water, carbon dioxide. Just follow the picture as I talk through it. So this is where geography and science really comes together. The key thing we need to remember is that trees remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere. So as the number of trees increase, more CO2 is removed from the atmosphere. So CO2 is a major greenhouse gas. So reducing the amount in the atmosphere is important. So really at this point, we've already talked about and developed our answer to gain full marks. So a second effect of photosynthesis is oxygen is released back into the atmosphere. So the mark scheme allows that focus on increased oxygen levels, providing you explain photosynthesis. So the link, you've got to make the link. Okay, 2 marks, but no need to drop one. We can easily explain it with an extra couple of words. Okay, so that was section A. Now on to section B. Identify which of the following is most likely to be species Y. Pretty obvious, isn't it? State one adaptation that helps many tiger animals to survive. It's one of these questions where you've probably done a lot of work on this. In fact, for my students, they were set a task to research and create 1-slide PowerPoint on the adaptations of animals in the tiger region. So a lot of work on that, only 1 mark in the end, but you know, hey, on exam day, it could be 3 marks. So some of the adaptations that we had a look at or were pointed to include moose, reindeer, brown bear, and the very memorable Pallas cat there. So it's adaptations, and of course this is the kind of stuff you've been doing since Key Stage 3, but you just need to make sure that you do have one to hand, one that you know. Okay, so if you need to make a note to yourself right now, you need to have a look at one animal in the tiger region and have a look at the adaptations. Okay, great question. Define what is meant by the term abiotic. Now, before we answer that, I just want us to take a step back from that just for a second, just to recap a couple of key terms. So an ecosystem, this is a community of living organisms. A biome is where we're operating here in this paper. A biome is a larger area consisting of many ecosystems. Our biotic factors, these are our living creatures or organisms that shape the environment. And our abiotic, these are the non-living physical and chemical elements in the ecosystem. So that will be your 1 mark answer. Next question, study figure 4. Here on the right. Again, this is in your resource booklet. I've just put it into this PowerPoint slide to make it easier to understand. Explain 2 reasons why temperature changes shown in figure 4, so these are the temperature changes, may threaten the biodiversity of Norway's tiger forest. So we'll just pause in here for another learning point. And let's look at some of the environmental factors that lead to biodiversity loss in the tiger region. We've got acid rain, climate change, wildfires, pests and diseases. So an example, acid precipitation, acid rain damages tree leaves and soil, weakening trees. This reduces habitats, food sources, causing a loss of biodiversity. A full table that my students did in class is here. So again, just this is about making sure that you do understand the environmental factors and you can recall them. So a good practice is to write them down and write down the effect, write down an example. With that, you've got anything from a 2 to 4 mark question really covered. Probably worth having a look at the actual mark scheme here. So it's asking for 1 mark for a basic explanation of a threat shown in figure 4. Figure 4 includes obviously the circles here. And 1 mark for applied knowledge. So this is how we're going to get our 4 marks here. So a model answer might read like this. Higher temperatures may increase the risk of wildfires in the tiger forest. Now the explanation. Wildfires destroy vegetation, habitats, reducing the number of species that can survive there and lowering biodiversity. So just 2 sentences, really succinct, 2 points. Second point, rising temperatures may also allow pests and diseases to survive through winter and spread more easily. You need to explain that. This can kill large numbers of trees, reducing habitats and food sources for other species and decreasing biodiversity. Okay, section C. So section C is asking you to look at figure 5. So here's figure 5 for us. Calculate the percentage of change in the use of energy from hydroelectric power sources between 73 and 2014. So I've highlighted 1973 and 2015. Those are the two figures that we need to work out. Now we can already see there's been an increase. So we know this is a positive number. The formula is the new value minus the original value, divided by the original value times 100. So in this case, it's the 11 minus the 5 equals 6. 6 divided by 5 equals 1.2 times 100 is 120%. There's been a 120% increase. Let's just pause and look at an example if the percentage change has decreased. So you can use the same formula. Some students will already be familiar with a different way to do it, but keeping the same formula, I've just switched the figures around. So 5 minus 11, we're on a minus 6. We know the percentage is a percentage decrease. Minus 6 minus the original value, which is 11. So we switched it around. Equals 0.545 times 100. That's 54.5%. So that's the decrease. Okay, so you can use the same formula. Just remember to know that you're working with a negative. Next question. State 2 pieces of evidence indicating that Norway is trying to reduce its footprint. So it clearly says to you in here, use these sections in the booklet to answer this question. So this is the first page that we had a look at, and we also had a look at that graph we've just done a second ago. So we could just a variety of things here. Uses renewables, uses biofuels, uses hydroelectric power, or decreasing use over time. There's another one on there. It's this Kyoto Protocol, just over here. So Norway is signatory to the Kyoto Protocol, which has agreed to significantly reduce carbon emissions. So you could use that one. You could also use that one there as well. So the point I'm making is the information is here in front of you. Next question. Study figure 6. Identify the year when total oil production was highest. So it's just a question of making sure that we can identify this on a graph. So the highest level of production, we can see it here, is 2001. Next question. Identify which of the following is the best estimate of Norway's total oil production in 1992. Now, what I've done there, whenever I see a date, I've underlined that. I need to know what I'm looking at. So 1992. Now, it's a multiple choice question, so no need to overcomplicate things. The keyword is estimate, but you need to find the axis, the 1992 axis. Then move up to the blue production line. So the value is 2000s on the y-axis, but of course note the units. So this graph is measured in 1,000 barrels per day, not barrels per day. So 2000, so 2000 times 1000 is 2 million. Next question. Study figure 7, put here in front of you. Explain why Norway exports a high percentage of the oil it produces. So you perhaps don't even need that one there. It's worth 3 marks. So you need a little bit more than a simple statement. We need to identify a reason from the resource. And that key reason there is population. So let's look at Norway's population. So Norway's a population of 5 million. Look at Russia, 144. Saudi Arabia, 32. So what do smaller populations mean? Smaller populations means there are fewer people using oil within the country, and as a result, Norway has a large surplus of oil for export. This explains why it exports 85% of the oil it produces. Doesn't need it. Another answer could be because Norway has an alternative energy source than hydroelectric power. It does not need to use as much of its own oil domestically. This allows more oil to be sold overseas for profit, generating a high GDP per person. Question D. Studies figure 7 over here and figure 8. Explain 2 social benefits for Norway's people from selling its oil. We already had a look at that in earlier when we actually were examining the source, and we identified this one here, didn't we? So the social, this is about people. Our explain question, that's the command word from Edexcel. So we're looking at an explanation of 2 social benefits for Norway's people from selling its oil. So we're not looking at benefits to businesses or the economy, but directly in support of people. So there's our first answer, directly from the source. Norway has a very generous welfare system, including excellent maternity and childcare provision. Second, social benefit, HDI, Human Development Index. Norway regularly tops the Human Development Index. So we can see that Norway's selling of oil, which is part of its sovereign wealth fund, not just part of it, that wealth fund itself invests in other companies around the world and generates an income, and then Norway uses that income for public services. So let's stick to the information we've got. Okay, so even if you didn't know, it's all here for you. One social benefit is that oil revenues help fund Norway's welfare system. This means people have access to services such as healthcare, maternity provision and childcare, improving their quality of life. So really, whenever you talk about social benefits, the shortcut always to go is to go healthcare and education. Can we see healthcare and education? We've got some additional information here on HDI. And that's how I would write that answer down as well. Okay, so a full 4-mark answer, we need the 2 points that we can see here. So HDI and well-funded healthcare system. All right, question E. Study figure 9. Here it is. Lots going on in figure 9. We'll break it down in a second. We need to remember the command word. So this command word is assess, not just describe. So assess means to weigh up different factors and decide which is most significant. So instead of listing challenges, we need to compare them. So assess, we need to compare them. Now, again, resource question, you can write, you can annotate, you can label on your resource question. The booklet is for you to use. Let's try and organize the evidence that we can see here, because this map contains a lot of information, but not all of it belongs together. Try and put a framework around things, framework categories. It makes it a lot easier, especially with these big 8-mark questions. So let's think about the factors that we can split this down into: human and physical. So the human challenges are those created by people, politics, society. So examples of that could be political disputes with neighbouring countries. You can see this one in here. The physical challenges, so we've got human and physical. The physical challenges are created by the natural environment. So technical difficulties to overcome. So a good way to start off this question, in planning this question, is to highlight what's physical and what's human. And that really, already then you've now got information which you just need to expand your own knowledge. Structure for this. Start with the physical challenge. So what is it? We've just seen it on that previous, just show you again. So we've got the 2 physical challenges and the human challenges. So deep water drilling. What's the challenge? Why is it difficult? Why does it matter? Another physical or human challenge you can put here. I put a human on there. And then in another environmental concern, another social one, and then your judgment. So the examiner wants a balanced debate, a balanced argument, and followed by a supported judgment here. So the one way to think about this and to focus on challenges for physical and human. So that one there should be human. Next question. Explain 2 energy efficiency strategies that can help fossil fuel supplies last longer. So not much evidence really in the resource to help you with this one, but you will have done resources probably since year 9. So let's see how we can organise energy efficient strategies. And one way to do this is to think about bottom up and top down approaches. So this will be familiar to you with the work that you did in paper 1. So our bottom up approaches are actions taken by individuals, households. Top down approaches are those led by governments and organisations. So we've got just by splitting it in 2 just makes it a lot easier to think about the strategies that are bottom up or are top down. Things that individuals and homes can do, or things that governments can do. Next question, studying figure 10 over here. Assess the economic costs and benefits for local people of developing this oil. So we could go straight to the resource, but we need to first decode the question because this tells us exactly what the examiner wants. So the command word is assess. So we've already had an assess question. We need to consider both sides of the argument before reaching a judgment. Next, notice the focus on economic benefits. And benefits for local people. So economic costs, and benefits. So we're not being asked about environmental impacts directly, unless we can actually link that back to economy. So money, jobs, income, the local economy. And also the question talks about local people. Okay, that's really, really important. We're not assessing the benefits for Norway as a whole, the government or companies. We are focusing specifically on the people living in on around those islands. So another good point where we can pause, spend a couple of minutes planning for this 8-mark question. So annotate this figure. This is useful. It will help you identify the evidence that you want to use. I've just done this in a more easier format to read, really. But the principle is the same. We're looking at economic benefits for local people, and we're looking at economic costs for local people. So I've organised it in this way, identifying the benefits and the costs. So more jobs, wealth, funding, economic costs, threats, tourism, threats of fishing, long-term risks. So this is really, really crucial for you to go through yourself. And each of these questions, you see how I've annotated them. I know I've done them in a fancy way on the computer here, but you just do them manually in writing and make it clear when you're writing, because as you're annotating, you want to be able to read your handwriting 2 minutes later as you're writing the question. So a structure for this question could be, we need to talk about economic benefits. We know that. So more jobs, higher wages, growth. So the positives around that. And then a mini judgment. So how can you improve local living standards? Then economic costs, again, a mini judgment. And then finally, reach a judgment. So this is often where the highest marks are won here. So you need to decide whether the economic benefits outweigh the economic costs, whether the long-term risks to fishing and tourism are more significant. And I'm going to show you the mark scheme now, identifying what's the examiner needs. So we've got benefits paragraph, so the mini judgment there, cost paragraph, final paragraph, and you can see here a balanced, well-developed argument that synthesizes relevant understanding coherently, leading to judgments that are supported by evidence throughout. So that format will help you. Okay, let's go to section D, question 4. Now, looking at the 3 options for Norway. Select the option that offers the best future for Norway's people and its environment. Justify your choice. Use information from the booklet and knowledge and understanding from the rest of your geography course to support your answer. So now, when it says use information from the resource booklet, it doesn't mean you go to a particular figure or resource to answer this question. What it means is that you've used all the resources up until this point, and you should start thinking about how you would answer and make a decision, a geographical decision based on these options in front of you. With all these 12 mark questions that you get in your exam in section D, the first thing to do is to think about and apply the 5 tests. So don't rush in and start working straight away. Don't write anything at the moment. You create this framework for yourself. The framework that we use in my school is social, economic and environmental. And of course, at a higher level now, we're on a 12 mark question, we add sustainability and security. So every option you get can be judged against these 5 criteria. And this will help you provide a more balanced DME geographical decision, rather than choosing just the option and just going for it. So once we've applied these tests, we can start deciding which option offers the best future for Norway's people and environment. I know I haven't actually read the options for you. You obviously would do that in the first instance. However, this is just about the framework as well, but getting ready for it. So the 5 tests: social. So how are people affected? Economy. How is the economy affected? Environment. What happens to the environment? Sustainability. Is it sustainable in the long term? And security. Does it improve security? So all these questions have to, if you apply these 5 tests, should make it could provide a good starting ground for these 12 mark questions. Now, this is a good time to read through the options. Option 1, set an example to other countries by stopping oil production altogether. That's an option. Norway could just stop producing altogether. Option 2, use up the existing resources, but stop looking for new oil fields. They know where they are, but to stop extracting oil from them. Continue to explore and develop all new oil fields. So just continue as is. So not using, but continuing to exploit and to export. So at this stage, you don't want to choose an option. Okay, you've applied the 5 tests. You've read all the details through. You applied the 5. You thought about the 5 tests when you've looked at it. You're thinking about it now. Now, don't be too quick to make the decision. It's because we need to test each option. So now we need to test each option. Now, at this point, you're thinking, this is the last question. It's a 12 mark question. How much time do I really have? So let me show you. Managing your time. You've got 90 minutes. As I said right at the top of the session, spend about up to 10 minutes on the resource booklet. Any less than that, you probably haven't read enough at this moment in time. But you can easily spend more than 10 minutes on the resource booklet and then forgot what you've read. So 10 minutes is probably enough just to identify what the key themes are, what the key options are, what it's asking you. Sections A, B and C, that's 48 marks. So 45 to 55 minutes. Some students will do it in a little bit quicker than that. But if you kept to these times, you would have about 25 to 35 minutes to answer this 12 mark question, which includes an additional 4 marks of SPAG. So planning this question is really, really crucial. So let's start thinking about how we can plan a question like this using our 5 factors. So social, economic, environmental, sustainability, and security. So you don't need to draw a table like this. You might want to do something rough, but you could use plus and minus symbols, plus a question mark for something that is neutral. So we're looking at the advantage, disadvantage, or in this case, best options. So how does it work for social? How does option 1 work for social? How does it work for economic, environmental, sustainability? So I've looked at the 3 options. I've measured them against the 5 factors, and we're going to, now we've done that, which will take some time. Let's look at what so when I say I put little minus figures, a little minus figure there, little plus figure there, but you can do this on your resource itself, or you can draw something. Just remember those. You remember the SEE and just then the 2 S's. So socio-economic, environmental, SS. So we can see option 1 performs quite strongly from the environment. We've got a plus here, and sustainability, I've given it a plus here. It's also working. Option 3, this is different. So with woes option 1, doesn't perform well for loss of jobs, income. But for jobs, option 3, which is basically to continue with the new fields, good revenue, good investment, good for jobs. So good. Option 2, this is ones of the compromise. So middle of the road, middle of the road, middle of the road, middle of the road. So we've got 3 middle of the road kind of neutral points along option 2 under our 5 factors. So that gives us a really, really good evidence to justify our choice. Here's a structure of your 12-mark answer. Doesn't need to be lots of paragraphs, but again, just nice 4 paragraphs. So introduce and state your chosen option. So I believe option 2 and explain. So again, when you've got this framework of SEE and SS, you've got a lot to talk about. Use evidence from the book, from the booklet. Use your own geographical knowledge. Give the reasons, the strengths for your chosen choice, main reasons. So state what they are, then the strengths of them. Why other options are weak. So you must reference another option. So option 3 is this, option 1 is this. And then your overall judgment. So again, just making a link back to what option 2 is. And that's it. So that's an entire paper, which I've whizzed through in about 42 minutes, including giving you some learning points and, not spending too much time on the resource booklet. So it's pretty quick. If you add in the times that you would have to pause, think, write down yourself, you've got enough time for an hour and a half exam. So best of luck.